Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll call the work session to order. First item on the agenda is the Mental Health Advisory Board update.
Thanks. Hello, everyone.
Morning.
Hello. My name is Kelsey Firehammer. I'm the Region 2 Adult Mental Health Initiative Coordinator. So I serve Hubbard County, Beltrami County, Clearwater, and Lake of the Woods counties. I'm here today supporting Hubbard County as kind of a liaison, kind of part of the local Mental Health Advisory Council.
And I'm Emily Utek. I'm the current chair of the local advisory council here in Hubbard County. And I just want you guys to be able to understand a little bit more of how important our cooperation with you as the board, as well as with the mental health, how important mental health is important not just to the people on the advisory council, but to the entire county, because it affects every one of us.
So before you start, when I read this, I have a question. So did Hubbard County choose to be a part of this, or is this mandatory by the state, or how?
It is mandatory by statute for each county to have a
Okay.
mental health advisory council, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess we just wanted to, we shared the information ahead of time, so I just wanted to see if there are any questions. We can review some of the documentation that we have and just answer any questions, talk a little bit more about what local advisory council is, what we do, and kind of give a report on things that we've been working on so far this year. However you guys want to do it.
I do have one
Oh, go ahead.
quick
You go.
question. So when were these councils created? Remember?
Back when the AMHIs were created, I believe, so in the 90s would be my guess.
Okay.
That's, yeah. So the AMHIs were created the 90s when the state hospitals were closed. So it was kind of to promote community integration for folks with mental illness. And so it's kind of was created at the same time as those initiatives as a way to involve folks with lived experience in the process of kind of, as it says here, in being involved in service delivery and being able to share what they need and how different services are impacting their lives.
So I was surfing around the internet trying to find information a little bit, and I couldn't find out, well, who makes up the council? Who's on the board? Anywhere?
Who's on the local advisory council? Yeah, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, when you fill out an application for the local advisory council, there are certain requirements that we ask that either you've been a parent of a child that has had mental health, or yourself have had mental health, if you work with people with mental health issues. And I want to say there's 8 different qualifications.
Yeah, I found some of that information.
And so once they apply, the chair and the vice chair and the secretary kind of get together and look over the application. Okay, do we have enough people or do we not? And then we say, okay, well, they'd be a good person and they join it. Right now, we do not have a limit because we're still hoping to get somebody who has had a child or recently or formerly. I mean, even on my own, I checked off a lot of boxes because a lot of it did apply. I've had kids who have had mental health issues. I myself still do have mental health issues, and I did as a child. So we're just trying to get more people to be involved because it does make a difference. So there's really not a limit.
Yeah, and my curiosity is because some entity created the original board. I believe it was counties that were required to do it, create the original board. So I'm curious, as a county board member, who makes up the committee? Who currently sits on the committee? It sounds like the current committee, if there's a vacancy, will select a new member. That's the way it sounds.
Yes.
But
Yes.
where do I find out who sits on the committee?
So, as part of Kelsey being hired as the AMHI coordinator, so as part of these regional AMHIs, then each county is required to have a local advisory council that's made up of members. And so we are now working to get a website that is actually, that'll be the Region 2 Adult Mental Health Initiative website. Kelsey's been working on it. And so that then will have all that information on it.
Membership.
The membership information, who sits on each advisory council, and kind of have all that info that we've supposed to have, had out there for quite some time.
1990?
Yep. And so, but the problem is that there just wasn't that coordination, even when I first started on there. So, so we're getting there, and that's why we hired Kelsey. And so, yes, that will be where
Yeah.
that stuff.
To me, it always comes down to government accountability.
Correct.
And especially in today's world, you see a lot, it's like, the taxpayer has a right to know who
Yep.
sits on those committees.
And right now, I guess the information would be housed, there is a county liaison who has, it's all, kind of paper copies. Right now, it has a listing of everybody who is a current member. So it would just be reaching out to it's a mental health, the adult services mental health folks for it.
Could
So,
you guys forward that to Jeff so he can
Yes.
get us to his commissioners, just so we know?
yeah, we can let you know the current membership. We are trying to also establish a process of reviewing that membership, because we have some folks who have been members for a really long time but don't necessarily participate anymore. So we've been working on updating the list to have it current of who is actually participating on the board. Right now, we have around 5 or 6 consumers who attend regularly. We have folks from Lake Country as the CSP group. We have Tom sits on it as a county commissioner, and then mental health staff from the county who will sit on that. So, yeah.
I have 2 questions. One is, so do all the counties in this district contribute money to pay your salary, or are you funded by the state?
So it was part of that position that we created, where we're funded 100% with the state through the Adult Mental Health Initiative that we get, each contribute, or it's her wages and everything are paid through that, as well as the website and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's all through the joint powers
Yeah,
agreement.
the joint powers agreement that we have.
Yes.
Okay. My second question, I'm on the Prime West board, and Prime West, along with commercial insurance, has lost millions of dollars this last year. So it says Medicaid pays for more mental health care for Minnesotans than anyone else. So does that mean that they pay more because they cover more mental health cases, or are they paying at a higher rate?
They don't pay at a higher rate, no.
they're-
They're covering a larger
So the
percentage of the
criteria
population.
is different for Minnesota than it is other states?
It's just more, a lot of Minnesotans qualify for Medicaid and therefore utilize that service.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, does the state set the Medicaid rate? I always get that confused. Do they set Medicare rates, not Medicaid?
I believe the Fed set the
One or the other.
Medicaid rates. Yeah,
Okay.
I think Medicare.
Medicare is state and
state
Medicaid is
and
federal.
I believe.
Yeah, I
would
think
have
that's
to
right,
double
too.
check and verify.
So yeah, the Medicaid statistic in there was, there's been a lot of information coming out about potential cuts to Medicaid, and so we've been advocating to just get more information out there about how Medicaid supports Minnesotans, and so that's why I included that statistic on there, because it is a large supporter of mental health in Minnesota specifically. So,
Thank you.
I have one question. This is the first time I read anything about the children's LAC. Is ours combined?
yes, so their statute allows you to combine children's and adult LACs. A lot of smaller counties do that just because of the numbers. And like Emily said, there is a lot of overlap in people who experience mental health themselves and who also have children who experience those. The children's side is something that we're working on getting more involved, and that's, so like Kayla she's our a youth or a children's mental health worker at the county, and so she's now a part of that group as well to help promote and bring that perspective in.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good age to start
Yeah,
with those issues, yes.
Yes.
it is.
Yeah. Any other initial questions? Yeah, so we can share a little bit more about what we've been working on. Kind of starting off with, we were able to attend Mental Health Day on the Hill at the Capitol in February. So do you want to share a little bit more about that?
It was my first time going to the Mental Health Day on the Hill, and it was amazing. It was overwhelming to actually see so many of our representatives caring about how important mental health is, not just to their constituents, but to their own families and friends that they know. They were sharing their stories. Going there, we met with Senator Utke and Representative Krista Knudsen, and both of them spent easily a half an hour. And Krista, at one point, she goes, "Do you have anything else going on? You want to keep talking?" And we're like, "We got to get going." And we were actually, some of them ran ahead because we were running late due to lunch, and then, but talking with them, explaining to them how important transportation is, because as you know, this is a rural area, and the buses are trying to get out so people can get to those appointments, because there are a lot of people who just don't have vehicles or, you know, even ways to get, because before COVID, the bus used to stop in Nevis and Akeley, and they're trying to reincorporate that again, which I think is great, because there are people out there that are like, how am I supposed to come into Park Rapids for my appointments? You know, trying to, and we only have so many volunteer drivers, which you guys, I'm sure, are aware, and that makes it more difficult as well. And the other thing, as we were talking, is affordable housing. Yeah, we're getting new housing up, but when people live on a fixed income, such as myself, you know, and somebody says, "Oh, well, this is affordable housing. It's only $750 a month. My income's only $730." You know, it's not affordable. So we were just trying to explain that, you know, it's important to make sure that when you have affordable housing, it helps those with mental health disorders, because that's one less anxiety, one less thing to worry about, which can toss into your depression or your bipolar or manics or any other, you know, even post-traumatic stress. The other thing is, I know we have a young man on our board who has a service dog, and he struggled trying to get training and resources on how to get that done, because it's just not there. And so we're trying to help support people such as himself or others to find how to get that training, because there are a lot of people who need legitimate service dogs. I myself have an emotional support animal, and everybody's like, "Oh, well, that's a service dog." No, it's not. Well, she provides a service. She keeps me calm, yes, but she's not trained to go get medicines if I go into diabetic shock. So trying to help people and explain that as well, I think, is important, because there are a lot of people who say, "Oh, yes, this is a service dog," and it's just a pet. So, and I know we've all come across those, you know, whether you're at the grocery store or restaurant. So we're just trying to do that, and just explaining to our reps that medical assistance is crucial, because if it wasn't for the medical assistance paying for my mental health stuff, I can pretty much say I would not be here. I've had chronic depression since I was 12 years old. And in my lifetime, I have attempted, and as my counselor said, successfully failed to take my life. And my husband took his life 9.5 years ago. So to me, suicide prevention and mental health is more near and dear to my heart more than ever. So when I was told about the LAC, I was like, I didn't even know this existed. So our cooperation and integration with the county board, as well as getting it out there, is crucial, because if you were to say you don't know anybody that has mental health illness, I would say you're lying, because we've all held at least one person, whether it's been a teacher, a coworker, a classmate, a family member, who's had some type of mental illness, depression, anxiety, PTSD. So, yeah, going to the Day on the Hill was overwhelming. And I even had, I made a sign saying how important mental health was, because I was saying that mental health has hope. It provides hope. So, thank you.
Yeah, so that was one thing that we were able to do this year, and that was funded by the AMHI state dollars as well, to be able to bring, we combined, kind of shared a bus with Beltrami County. So total, there were 17 of us, I believe, that were able to attend. 11 of those were consumers who were part of the LAC group, and then we had some staff from the clubhouses, so Lake Country and Hope House up in Bemidji, and myself, and we were able to attend and bring these priorities, which were established ahead of time with input. They were almost entirely created by the LAC members, in terms of what they wanted to advocate for at the legislature. So it was a really great event, and organized and everything with the help of the LAC. So that was a big push and a big thing that we were able to accomplish so far this year. Kind of looking forward, next month is Mental Health Awareness Month. So that's kind of one of the strategic reasons why we wanted to visit with you guys this month, to be able to share that and continue to raise that awareness. There are some different things that folks are doing throughout the state to kind of promote mental health awareness. This year, the theme is Turn Awareness into Action. And so it talks about how, like, the progress that we've made in recognizing the importance of mental health. I would say even just in the last 5 to 10 years, there has been an increase in awareness of the need for mental health support. And so turning that awareness of the need into action is something the Minnesota Department of Health has shared as the theme, and they created kind of a toolkit of things that folks, individuals, organizations, and governments can do to promote mental health awareness in the month of May. I just received this information, so it wasn't in the packet that you all received. But they have it kind of broken down into each week. So week 1, it encourages folks to explore your mental health and understand that every single person has mental health. That it's a good thing to have mental health. It means that, you know, you're able to function and manage your emotions. All of those things are included in mental health. And so it kind of turns it around to being seen as a positive thing, that, you know, promoting your mental well-being. Week 2 is nurturing your mental well-being, so things that you can do to improve that. Week 3 is find mental health support in tough times, so that's a great time to spotlight different mental health resources in the community. And then week 4 is embrace your mental health journey, which talks about setting goals and celebrating recovery and success in mental health. So I know I will be trying to share some of this information out during the weeks in May to promote that. Some counties and governments have done like proclamations about Mental Health Awareness Month. Some have posted on Facebook. They have a lot of, MDH has put out some like images and things that folks can use just to post on their social media to have a unified message around mental health in the month of May. So if that's something that folks are interested in, I can definitely share more information. And that's something I was going to talk with folks at Human Services as well about sharing on our SharePoint page or on our website, just getting more information out about that. We've talked about maybe trying to get an article or something in the paper about mental health to just share with the community, but still brainstorming some ideas. So that's something we also wanted to bring to you all as a group and just share that that's something that we're working on looking forward. Yeah. And
Okay, anything else?
The last thing that we have as part of the LAC, and this is also part of statute, is that LACs do a needs assessment. So it's supposed to be something that the community does yearly, I believe. They're not super clear. We're working on getting some clarification from the state advisory board about that. Essentially, the LAC is to work with folks in the county to gather recommendations and things around the needs and services that are available in the area. So we did a pretty small one last year that gathered information about, and that's how we've really confirmed needs for transportation, housing, things like that. So it's pretty small scale so far, but that's another thing that we work on as an LAC in the year. So just wanted to note that.
So I got a question, if that's okay. You spoke about housing, and not being affordable, and you're aware the county has been working on
Yeah.
housing issues.
Yeah.
But my question is there a need for housing specific to mental health patients too, that
Well, I know
is not
we've,
being filled? And what would those numbers look like? And when did if they started to tick up, when did they start to tick up?
I think one thing that we've talked a lot about with affordable housing, specifically for folks with mental health conditions, is there have been issues or people have reported where, oh, I got an eviction, or I got this, I kind of got in trouble with this one landlord because I was having a mental health crisis, and now I can't get housing anywhere in Park Rapids because they all have the same company who does the landlords or who manages all the properties, and so therefore I'm not able to get housing. So that was one thing we've talked about, is having housing that is supportive and more aware of potential concerns that folks with mental health conditions may have, and how that might impact how they show up in a housing situation, and just being more flexible and understanding about those types of things would be something that would specifically support folks with lived experience of mental health. There are also models that are more of like a supportive housing model that have case managers or folks who are on site to help folks kind of manage all the different aspects of their lives, maybe having someone on staff 24 hours a day if there's things that come up in the middle of the night, instead of it being the police are called or other folks are involved. If there's someone on site who's able to help support those are all models that have been shown to be more supportive for folks who have mental health conditions. So that is a little bit more specifics of what we talked about, and some additional barriers that folks in our communities have come across. Is there anything else you wanted to?
I just know, there's a lot of people who have said, well, I had to approach my manager and I was having a mental health issue, and they're like, well, you're just faking it, so just leave me the hell alone. Or, well, I didn't have an issue with you. And yeah, when there's witnesses. So it's a struggle where people who are having mental health issues, even those in my building who are really struggling, and everybody's like, they don't have a mental health issue. Yes, they do. How do you know? I said, I can't tell you. That's not my way. But, and it's a struggle, because then they go to try to talk to the management, and the management's like, well, that's not my responsibility. I'm not their mother. I'm not their case manager. I'm not their health worker. They have to deal with it themselves. So they're just not as compassionate as you would hope they would be.
So the tough part here then is, versus like a regular multi-unit housing development, you've got a case where you want more case aids and things like that. Now it's more expensive. So how do you make it affordable when you just made it more expensive? Mm-hmm. It gets to the point where you can't do what you're suggesting without probably at minimum state government being involved some way. And since the 90s, they've been going the other way.
Mm-hmm. So
I
Brett,
don't know that'd be really tough to solve.
when we had the men and women's house owned by the HRA, and then they weren't full or they weren't working well, was that the setup, or because they didn't have a case aid 24/7, or?
So, from what I understand, because that was before my time, there was some disagreements amongst providers, the two different providers, and so it just didn't work out, and there wasn't a resolution. And then I did attempt to try to get things back up, and then, but they weren't willing to work together, the two different organizations, and so that was more of that. It was more of the administrative setup and having two entities that just didn't work out.
So when you said, staff by case aid, so let's just say your department had a house, okay? Hypothetically,
Sure.
then you would need 3 employees of the county to staff 24/7, would that be?
Correct. It would probably be more like 4 to 6 for one house, just
Sure, because
because
there's weekends and. yeah.
weekends, different things, as well as probably having more than one person on occasionally, depending on, it would be something up to the county as far as risk mitigation, depending on the safety staffing and stuff, so, yeah.
I
So
will
it's really complex.
It is
Very.
complex, yes, and that's why we know it won't be solved overnight. We just like to continue bringing, bring feedback and things from what we're hearing. And I will say that part of our AMHI dollars that we receive from the state, there is some housing subsidy portions in that. So if that was something that people were interested in exploring, we could potentially partner on that as a region, or use, the county receives a portion of those AMHI dollars that could potentially be put towards something to support a supportive housing program that is specifically tailored for folks with mental illness, so.
I would just mention, you maybe are seeing the consequences of the closing of Aguaching, because it had 300 to 400 patients at one time.
And
I
other-
think when it closed, it was down to about 150, but, obviously, the need's still there. May not have been in the 90s for a moment, but it's back.
There were multiple facilities that were basically shuttered or reinvented to something different.
Right, and you saw the pendulum swing in the 90s and so we've got to look as a communities of finding that middle ground of where that is. Providing, being able to provide somebody with a standard living, but also be able to provide them with the supports they need, because there just is that. So, we've seen the pendulum swing from one far to the other far. Now we just have to find somewhere in the middle. And then, as Kelsey was talking about with those EMH dollars, and I know that we have, we have a budget crisis happening now in the state, and so we will leverage the dollars that we have currently to the best that we can to help out until that goes somewhere, and then we will have to have some of those hard conversations. But just know from our point, and that's why we have Kelsey, is that we are leveraging those dollars as best we can to mitigate the county taxpayers' dollars as well.
So on the housing side again, then why are they living now? They gotta be somewhere, because, I don't see that prevalent of a homeless issue, not that there's not some, but.
So you're asking, like, where are folks with mental illness?
Well, that I can't afford, the rates for apartments around, where are they? Where are they staying?
Lots with family members or doubled up, those types of things. That's where, like, yes, they might not be on the streets homeless, but there are other ways of not having their own space to live. Yeah.
And there's some subsidies through Mahoobie as well. They have like the vouchers that they can get for subsidized housing as well, so.
Yeah. There are some of those, and then there's, like, you get a voucher and you get a house or a place to stay, and then if there's a mental health issue, then sometimes if you lose that, you end up back on the list, and so it can be kind of this rotating door of challenges and not non-stable housing in that way, so, yeah.
So one of my questions for you, Brian, have you, through all of your contacts, through your associations and whatnot, have you seen any sort of, ingenious ideas to address the issue with housing and with any sort of treatments or anything like that? That might be something, you can kind of pick and choose and model something to work well?
Yeah, and and actually, one of the things that I've given thought to is in Bemidji they have, and it was more for a, they call it a dry, they have a shelter, but it's not really a shelter, it's that big facility they built up back over by where, this will date myself, where Tijuana's used to be, if you guys remember, there's that big, and they have part of it where it's like a wet, where they can have apartments and whatever. But that would be a model that I would say that would work and could work potentially for the mental health and for that part of it too, where you could have where a company, a private company that could work and build and provide that would then support those with mental illness, and and having just different services that could come through the building and work with that. So yes, that is one big one that I've thought about. Haven't figured out how to tackle that or even get harnessed up to climb that cliff, but it is a good model that could be duplicated.
That's private
That is
organization?
private,
Okay.
yes.
So that's more of a transitional housing
Yes.
type thing. So it's designed to be more temporary than we're going to support this person for their entire lifetime. It's more of like, we're going to support this person while they're struggling, get them case management, get them set up with therapy appointments or whatever they need so that they're able to then secure stable housing. So it's, can be a little bit more cost effective because you're not supporting someone for as long a period of time, but it's not as quick a turnaround as a 30-day shelter or something like that. It's more involved, and then can be, yeah, that transition to, because there's a lot of studies that show that stable housing can support, in recovery from mental illness and have some more stability. It's housing first model is supported for substance use as well, so. there's lots of-
Is that a nonprofit that is supported through grants and donations?
I believe so. I'd have to look and see again. It was done way back in, I think, 2016, 17, something like that. So I believe it is a nonprofit, but I mean, they do get some reimbursements and stuff as well, because that is a substance use one. That's another part of the model that would have to be looked at as far as how it could happen, but it could be done.
Okay. All right.
Emily, did you get my email about tomorrow's meeting?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Wish her luck.
Yeah, two eye surgeries this week. One of them's tomorrow. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you so much for meeting with
Sure.
us.
Thank you.
All right, MCIT.
Well, good morning, folks. Appreciate you having me, squeezing me in on the agenda. So my name is Richard Meehy. I'm a risk management consultant with MCIT. So here to chat with you today about kind of the condition of the county. What I wanted to do was kind of go over some generic MCIT-wide information to let you know what we are, maybe what we aren't, as part of a refresher as well. And then we'll weave in and out of some Hubbard County specifics as we kind of go through the boxes. So you have a handout. My goal is not to read this verbatim. We'll kind of touch on every box. Please throw questions at me. If I don't know the answers to them, I'll sure to take them down and get you to the folks that do. My focus is on data and cybersecurity measures and matters, so that's really where I focus. But we're a small entity, and I know the folks very well, so if you stump me, I'll get you an answer as quickly as possible on a business day or two. So again, by way of introduction, MCIT, we are your risk-sharing pool. So you've been a member for not all of our 46 years. It looks like Hubbard's been in for nearly 40 of those. So we started in 1979 when counties were having trouble procuring cost-effective, decent coverage. So this model started as a joint powers entity as a way for counties to procure and secure cost-effective coverage. And over the years, we've evolved to take other services in-house, claims handling, risk mitigation, loss control, those types of things. So we are different from an insurance company in some of our terminology and certainly in our philosophy. An insurance company is going to take a premium, we take a contribution. So that's a different in words. But the way we try to keep costs down is we want to eliminate claims, reduce claims, handle claims very cost effectively. And we don't have a profit model. We don't take commissions. We're not sponsoring any professional golf tournaments. You won't see MCIT stickers on any hockey helmets. So we try to operate as cost effectively as possible to serve the public. So that's what we are. The other thing that's nice is we are governed by a board of your peers. So there's 9 commissioners, auditor, treasurers, administrators. That makes up our board. So they know your struggles, they know your day-to-day and what our counties in Minnesota face. And so we really rely on them as our North Star to help guide the ship. And again, very involved and very impactful board. We're up to nearly 500 members. We have 81 of the 87 counties. So most counties, besides the major metro, the 4 metro, Anoka, Hennepin, Dakota, Ramsey, and then Olmsted and St. Louis. So Those other counties tend to self-insure. That if they were to join, that tail would kind of wag the dog, so we're nicely fit there. But we have lots of other members, soil and water conservation districts, ag societies, historical societies, EDA, HRAs, and the like. So right around 500 members. That number kind of fluctuates a little bit as things happen. One watershed, one plan will kind of absorb some things and eliminate others. So again, that's where we sit as of today. And if I talk to you this time next year, that number will likely change. Commissioners, what we ask of you folks is to engage with us. We want to know your struggles. It's nice to have dialogue and conversation before a loss or before situations occur, before rates are shown. We want to know what's going on, and we want to be involved in the other areas that you might have influence in, special groups. We speak at conferences. We just want you to promote your safety program, and we want to, again, have that two-way street. So we want to hear what your struggles are so we can acknowledge those and try to chart a course going forward with you. So now I'm on page 2, top left bucket. We'll kind of talk about program changes that moderate reinsurance costs. And now I'll kind of weave into terminology you'd hear in the traditional insurance setting. So as MCIT, as your risk pool, our pool buys reinsurance for catastrophic claims. So when we run into matters where the loss is going to hit limits from our risk pool, we have to then turn it into reinsurance. And here's where we've really seen struggles with costs going up. As you see in the property and liability chart there, that's a trend line that's ticking up pretty steeply. What we did to combat that was we raised our reinsurance limit as a cost-cutting measure to our membership. So simply put, we raised our retention rate. So on the property or in the liability side of things, we traditionally didn't fire that off until it was an $850,000 claim. We raised that to $1 million, and which resulted in 21%. That saved us about 20% in premium spike. Inversely, on the work comp side of things, raising that retention from 5 to $1 million, that resulted in some significant savings. So those are the things where we have control and decisions that our board makes with other actuarial help and third-party help to help us make those decisions to, again, make sure our risk pool stays healthy, and we're taking on as much as we can to keep costs down for our memberships in areas that we can. So I'll pause there. Any questions on those topics? If not, I'll kind of flow into the total insured values. If you look at that chart, and I'm on the bottom left grid now, this is starting to kind of resemble more of a hockey stick. If you look at the numbers 6 to 7 from 21 to 22, it's going up, but it's not that significant. Hubbard, you guys had your appraisal in 2023, so you're kind of right in the midst of that steep increase that we're starting to see as of with the rise of materials, labor costs, and the like. Those costs are just continually increasing. So this is one of the areas where it's not always an apples to apples comparison to look at how you procure insurance for your county and how you buy it personally at home. This is one of those areas where we're just all battling. The world's just battling increased costs right now of labor, materials, and the like. So with that, I'm going to jump over to rate anticipate expenses. So again, 2023 appraisal for Hubbard County, you kind of sit right in the middle of this chart. But if you look at the ups and downs that we're going through as far as rate changes, we're still trying to settle out from COVID. So we had a precipitous decline in work comp claims as we came off of COVID. As our workforce started moving and shaking a little bit more, that number naturally tracked back up. And again, you folks incurred about an 11% increase in rates from 24 to 25. I would just candidly say that's on the medium to low side of where we saw things. The box to the right, I don't want to skip over that, but I don't want to belabor it either. The nuts and bolts of our operation is a risk pool, is to be a savings account that we take those funds, those contributions, they get invested, we pay claims. hopefully we mitigate losses enough and control claims enough that we can return a dividend to you. So that's where Hubbard County's dividend is called out there on the bottom of that upper right-hand box. That is always the goal. We've been able to do that for quite some time on the property casualty side of things. Now I'm going to drop down to the cyber bucket there. So this is kind of an interesting, almost a misnomer or an anomaly in the insurance world. We had the unfortunate situation of increase in frequency. As you can see, the number of claims are going up, but we luckily had a decrease in severity. That's Insurance 101. We rely on two very simple metrics, frequency and severity, how often and how bad. So this was a fortunate trend for us where things were going up, instances were happening, but the costs came down a little bit, and that can be explained where we just simply did not, luckily, fortunately, we did not have any ransomware claims in 2024. Now, I won't hijack your whole day. I'd love to talk about this for the rest of the day, but these are due to a lot of things. But we're seeing most groups that we go out and spend some time with, whether it's social services, whether it's soil and water conservation districts, counties, the groups are all making cyber a portion of their conferences, of their communication. We're seeing a lot of adoption of services and technology, and also education. So this is an area where, there's very little we can do when the hail is coming. We can't get the gymnastics mats out of the gym and throw them up on the roof to protect the shingles. Those things are going to happen. When we have cyber and data loss situations, those are largely preventable. So we are all catching up. The working world is catching up. It's a digital world we're all being forced to live in, but the education is starting to catch up. So hopefully we can continue to get those numbers to decline.
So, quick question, you
Yeah.
may not know the answer to, but why is it so difficult to find and prosecute some of these people?
Yeah, cryptocurrency. That's my candid answer from the hip. Especially as of late, it's become more legitimate. You'd see both sides of the aisle skeptical of whether to go in on crypto, but now, everybody is. And so that's how bad guys get the money, and they can't be as easily traced. And we're also just playing catch up. Very, very creative, and it's very, very simple. The way we operate, I think one of the most common one is a misdirected payment, where all of our construction projects, for example, are very public. The timing of them, the contractors we work with, how they're being billed, that's all public information. So it is not that difficult to come up with a spoof invoice. And unfortunately, Minnesota as a state is at the tip top of business email compromise claims, interestingly enough, just in the United States. And it has a lot to do with, that's not my job is not a phrase that we like to say. If somebody were to get an email, a request to say, hey, can you get this paid? We tend to jump in and check it out later, where other states apparently either have less willingness to do so, or maybe some better checks and balances. But we have a lot of trust, and we have a lot of people that are willing to do things maybe outside of their normal scope. And unfortunately, threat actors, bad guys can kind of figure that stuff out too and throw a lot of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. So kind of a rambling answer there, but bad guys are clever. We've figured out a way to pay them effectively, and it's quite a cottage industry. So, great question. I'm going to flip over to the back and highlight some actually really good news. Let's talk on the work comp side of things right now. So, the way workers' compensation works, it's a complicated formula we come up with. You get a batting average, a quarterback rating, a scorecard. It's called a mod rate. And it takes a lot of information in to come up with how you get scored as a county in a numerical sense. And so, very simply put, Hubbard County, your score is 0.974. Now, what we'd expect an average is 1.0. Again, that's the number that is an average. So what that means is you are healthier. You operate in a deficit, meaning every work comp claim that you experience in Hubbard County costs on average $6,200 less than your peers. So that's a testament to good conditions, healthy work environments. I'm not surprised coming off of, you have mental health as a priority and at least a speaking topic for today. When you have a happy, healthy place to work where people are motivated to get back to, those are all things that keep costs down. It's good for the taxpayer. It's good for everybody. So congratulations on that. That's a tricky formula. It sticks with you for a long time. So if you have one bad year, it hangs around for 3. The way we figure these out, for instance, right, what we're looking at in front of us, this is 2024 data, which is too new. We call that greenfield, so that doesn't work. So you get scored on 23, 22, and 21. So that's how that number gets generated. So it can be a good thing. If you have a great year, it hangs on for a little bit. If you have a bad year, it takes a little bit to shake it, but it is a pretty good snapshot in time that has some staying power to it. I'll flip to the box to the right here when we just look at kind of what facts and figures we would see, where our claims are coming from in frequency and what they tend to cost. And the one that would probably jump out is on property and liability annual averages, law enforcement liability, $41,000 per claim. The high ones tend to be in law enforcement and highway type of operations for obvious reasons. Those are 24-hour, 365 situations, and obviously law enforcement, those can get problematic in a hurry, just the myriad of challenges and different things that we see out of that, but some interesting numbers to go over. All right, so that bottom chunk is just kind of things that we want you to be aware of. Employee assistance program is what I want to highlight. Hubbard County's kind of been on both sides of that. We want to see about a 4% engagement in that. 23 we're above, 24 a little below at a 5 and a 2. So I think there's a sweet spot in there. And those are things that the Employee Assistance Program is something we're very proud of to offer. Grief counseling, personal, if you need some professional development, if you have somebody that's new into leadership and they have difficult conversations that they might need to have from workplace strife and things like that. There's just a myriad of things that they can seek out there. They're very good at counseling from in-person or digital, so they'll kind of meet you where they are. So we're happy to offer that. Minnesota Safety Council partnership has always been strong. Patrol, that's probably one thing I'd really like to highlight here lastly is the Peace Officers Accredited Training. Hubbard's been a program involved in that program for over a decade now with looks like close to 30 folks that have gone through that. So that's something we want to continue to promote and congratulate and encourage you folks to do. So again, threw a lot at you in a little bit. If there are any questions, I'd love to take them. If you think of something later, you can certainly get it to us. Appreciated Jeff's communication on getting things scheduled here. So if you need a funnel through him, happy to do so. But appreciate your membership. Yeah, go ahead.
The auto claims, it seems like it's pretty high. Does MCIT either promote or require something like defensive driving? Or?
Yeah, great question. We have all of those things at the ready: defensive driving, deer strike tips and tricks, and those types of things. So yeah, if there's and we do the defensive driving that is in partnership with the Minnesota Safety Council. We utilize their resources as well. But yeah, and that is another situation where the technology that is in these vehicles, what used to be a normal deer strike is now exponentially higher when you have a lane departure system. It used to be a bumper, used to be a fender flare, and now it's a gizmo or gadget that goes in there as well.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions?
Thanks, folks.
Well, thank you. Okay, we will move on to the land donation declaration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a continuation of an item that's been going on for a little over 2 years now. The last board action was to approve the application for and purchase of approximately 1,800 acres through Lessard Sams, and we're at the point where the closing is set for next week. The items in this board report include maps that show where those parcels are. They basically are parcels that connect our managed forests or fill in gaps in our managed forests. They're parcels that make whole, some of our trail systems. So a lot of these parcels were identified as the grant and aid trails went across parcels that weren't under county management. So this is something that was all set in place. I hope you've had a time to review. And really, the question was, when I looked at the authority to this point, the board's already approved this. The board just hasn't consented to having somebody administratively execute the resolution that says that they're going to transfer those properties to the county. The closing is established, the grant was already done. So the last piece is this resolution that says that we're going to accept the land that's donated to the county at the end of this process. And essentially, at the end of this process would be days after the closing is scheduled on Tuesday, the 15th. And I wanted to put it off and wait until next week, but that would have interfered with the closing that they had scheduled and would have put 9 other counties out in a bad situation. So essentially, as I'm reading the documentation, the board has already approved this. It's just a matter of, I need a head nod that says that I can sign for the county on this declaration to make sure they have what they need for closing.
Okay.
I had one question on the as-is part of it.
Yep.
Because, there may be some issues of property lines or encroachments and things like that. Is Corey's department going to systematically go through all these things and make sure anything that is corrected?
I would guess that we would not go parcel by parcel and verify all of those things. I would guess that they would be willing to, and they're here so they can answer that question, that they would be able to be willing to investigate those things as they arise.
I was thinking, once we receive ownership.
Yep.
Just to make sure everything's cleared up for the future, systematically go through and get everything cleared up.
Aaron, you want to take a shot at that? Jacob, anyone?
Well,
I don't know if he's asking, is there a plan to do that after we acquire them, or would you do it on a case-by-case basis?
Case by case, we're buying enough where we could just pop in, check them out. I'm pretty sure Potlatch, when they were cutting leases, you had to get everything out anyways before they terminated the lease. So I think most of the junk and stuff is taken out, if that's kind of what you're asking, or are you more wondering?
Encroachments, things like that.
From private landowners?
Private landowners,
Up
yeah.
to them? Yeah, I guess, like I said, we could just do that on a case by case when we're buy it, pop in, check quick, and then handle it from there if there is an issue.
And the majority of these are adjoining or contiguous parcels to lands that we're already managing. So if there's any issue with that line, that issue can be resolved by us because we own both sides of it. In the cases where that's not the case, I would imagine that we would just have to resolve. Hubbard County is in a much better situation relative to that than most counties, just because of how complete our survey monumentation is and the data that we have relative to knowing where those corners are. So I don't anticipate, and I appreciate your reading of that resolution. This is general language that we would put in resolutions we give other people to sign to. They'll be responsible for any property investigation costs, they'll be responsible for recording costs, and they're receiving this as is. That's just because the grant that was applied for allowed for the purchase of the properties and not for any of the other stuff. In certain circumstances, we're gonna do our title work ahead of time and make sure everything's free and clear and good, like in finishing up the purchase of the house on the corner here. And here where we don't really anticipate any of that is just legal necessities to say that we're not gonna hold that against the trust fund or the group purchasing this, that we'll clean that up. I think by far and large, were you guys involved with the conversation when Chip was generating this list? Because this all happened before Corey got here, right? So you guys are kind of well aware of the reasons and the criteria that these parcels were selected in that?
Kind of our first step we'll do, like we did last time, is we'll go and inventory all these
nice thing with all of these, Potlatch, their first big sell-off was all their marginal lands, basically they didn't grow timber. So the stuff they still have it's really nice timber, every one of those.
We've set up sales on parcels we got during the first time when we got potlatch lands already. A lot of it's stuff we can set up for timber sales too.
So you guys were fully aware of this and the timing of this, and you don't anticipate any problems integrating this into your regular management plan? Probably, it's already included in the new management plan.
Should be.
It's already included in the new management plan. Like I said, this is just administrative. When she sent this to Corey and said, can you sign this and get it back to me? I saw that the board had taken all the action right up to the point that I just didn't want Corey to sign
Yep.
until I saw specifically something, some consent or some notation that said administratively, we can sign this agreement on behalf of the county. So I don't really, and we're at a work session, so I'm not actually asking for a vote. I'm just asking for the heads nodded that we've reminded you enough about this project that you understand that, and then I'll sign it because Corey's on vacation this week.
Consensus? Yep. Okay.
Very good. And then, Mr. Chair, I just had two handouts on your desk. And both of those are essentially items that I would have brought forward to the General Government Committee. But because they were the only things I had for the General Government Committee and they're of interest to all of you, I just highlight them and tell you, A, there's the budget calendar for 2026 that's proposed. That's exactly following the same timeline and criteria that we've been using since I've been here, with the addition of the front end approving the 5-year capital plan and the process which we talked about. So in May, we'll set a date for a public hearing. That first meeting in June, we'll have the public hearing, and before you will be the approval of the 5-year capital plan. And then the rest of the items will follow after that. And then we've had a couple of conversations about setting up a legislative update for the legislative break that's going to be happening next week. And I've been able to confirm with Senator Utke that he's available on the 15th at 2 o'clock. And I've confirmed with most of you that you liked option A or B, which means we don't disrupt our schedule, that we would just have our meeting in the morning, have our HRA meeting, and then we'd reconvene after lunch as a continuation of the board meeting to have the legislative update. I will also send invitations to Matt Bliss and Michelle Knudsen and Steve Green, because they also represent people in Hubbard County, but it was really important that we had confirmed time with Senator Utke that he was going to be able to be here to even start the conversation. So that will be the plan, is that the 2 o'clock will be a continuation of the regular board meeting next week. And this is a list of items that we were already aware of, that you've seen in front of you before. I am going to be at a county administrators meeting this week, and we're going to be getting an update on the current status, so I will be updating these numbers. Brian's going to help me take a look at updating the numbers versus relative to human services. But if all these things come to pass, we're looking at if nothing changes except all these cost shifts, we're looking at a big number for 2026. And that's why it's important to have a conversation with our legislators and have them understand that, and it'll also help us establish a place to start when we do get into our budgeting season for next year.
That PILT change, that could be quite significant there if they go with that.
As I understand, the proposal is a 34% reduction in the state PILT payments.
So at MRC yesterday, Senator O'Hare, what's his last name? I can't remember. Anyway, he's a DFL senator from up north, and he's kind of taken this on, and he's just adamant that there cannot be a cut in PILT. What was his horse? What's his last name?
Grant Hochschild,
I'll shout.
he's up at St. Louis County, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, he's, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Huge cut.
And so, yeah, so he's really taken this on. So after listening to him yesterday, I was a little more hopeful that this isn't a done deal.
Yeah, it just, the pill cuts disproportionately affect
Yep.
a small amount of counties.
And
Really
not the metro.
It's not a fair cut.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did he say? His comments were pretty good in the hearing, as he said, it's not fair to use northern Minnesota as your playground and then cut their revenue.
Not compensate.
Yeah.
Has UT weighed in on this at all, or is this what you're talking about, meeting with him about?
This will be one of the things that we're talking about. The change to the pill payment formula came up after the preliminary budget proposal. So everybody is just kind of trying to find their way through that, and state pill payment is the only one this affects. So there's 9 or 12 counties throughout the state of Minnesota that are significantly impacted by this, and that's one of the, I think that's one of the points we have to argue is that we're managing those lands on behalf of the state and the public, and that targeting a source of revenue that only affects a few of us is not necessarily spreading it out evenly.
That was just recently one of their selling points for the 3M property.
I know.
So, oh, you got this increase in pill payment. Well, what's happening here?
Makes it worse.
And we never have heard the dollar transaction amount, valuation of that property.
Well, it was about 5 million.
It was,
That's what 3M's getting for it.
okay.
Do you know how many dollars were legacy
Well, what did-
dollars used to?
I don't know about that.
Was that what they appraised it at? Because the state appraiser had to review it for the transaction.
Yeah,
And
I
then
don't know.
that would be, our PILT would be based off that value, so.
It made the national news and it just had that value around 5 million.
So one thing MRC was gonna look into, and I forgot to ask yesterday, was because the DNR has a surplus from last year they haven't spent at the, not this meeting, but the last MRC meeting, we talked about why not take, because there are no cuts to the DNR budget, since they already are sitting on a surplus, why not take the amount of money needed to fund AIS from the DNR budget? But we didn't talk about that
No,
yesterday.
that didn't get mentioned.
I should have asked about that, but I forgot.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to go over?
I don't believe so, so that we would not have a general government meeting today. We have a meeting with our benefit administrator at 11:30, and then I'm on a call with Otter Tail County. They have asked that Josh Stevenson and I join them for a conversation with one of their subcommittees, talking about creating an ambulance service district. So we're very busy with those things. And then I'll be leaving tomorrow. I have 2 days down at St. Paul with the county administrators. We're going to be meeting at the MCIT building and reviewing a lot of legislative stuff within those updates.
Okay. So we are now adjourned. Thank you.
Jeff, do you need this employment and economic development